Welcome our speakers of the next session. We have here with us Hemant Sahal, who is the CEO of Collpoll. Thanks for joining, Hemant. And we have with us Dr. Ashwin Fernandes, who is the CEO of QS, IG. I can't see the full name here. I'm sorry.
QSI gauge.
Okay. Yeah. QSI gauge, and we also have with us Meeta Sengupta, who is education strategy and policy research consultant. Welcome, Meeta. Thanks for joining us. Welcome, Hemant, and welcome, Dr. Ashwin. So the theme of the session is decoding future of technology in NEP 2020, approaches, opportunities, and challenges. So let me ask each of the panelists to start with that what struck you from a technological perspective, that what are the key reforms the NEP is talking about from a technology angle. So let me start with Dr. Ashwin. Your views, please.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gupta, for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be here, and a warm welcome to everyone. So I think the National Education Policy 2020 is definitely revolutionary. It's an aspirational policy we have set. And I think there are multiple aspects here, including the need for early childhood care, inclusive education, and revamping the current curriculum. I think the inherent thread that runs through the policy is the interplay of education and technology. So some of the notes which the policy makes is that the extensive use of technology in teaching and learning, removing the language barriers, increasing access as well as education planning and management. Now, the current times we are in are unprecedented, and I think in the pandemic situation, we have technology has been a great driver for what's happening in the teaching and learning space, and I think it's apt for the NEP to come in at this time and to formalize the way forward. I think with virtual learning replacing in-person learning, students and teachers who are compelled to reimagine how conventional learning and teaching techniques are taking place, the introduction of NEP at this critical juncture is significant, I believe. And I think it is a quintessential tool towards building a self-reliant India. Now, there are two approaches which I think we will look at when we look at digital technology. One is at the school side and one is at the higher education side. So in the school area, the policy recognizes the importance of technology in aiding teachers, bridging the language barrier between teachers and students, creating digital libraries, and so forth and so on, and especially for the differently abled children as well, and to give them the advantage there. It also proposes that coding be introduced in school curriculum as an important skill that students must develop. When we look at further on, the policy also notes that technology can be an effective tool in the school education in facilitating teacher education, and encourages the use of the technology platforms which are available for online teacher training. So I think that's one of the takeaways, I believe, where we look at school education. When we're looking at higher education, what happens, it also promotes the utilization of technology for the effective delivery and the transparency of regulatory bodies. Now, we've seen NAC come in and talk earlier about how things have gone online. And I think we've been at QS, particularly when rankings were completely online many years ago, people were saying, well, somebody needs to visit the campus and verify the infrastructure. But that push which technology has brought in now in the pandemic has been formalized by the NEP, which is great. And I think the Higher Education Commission of India, and there's 4 verticals which we can look at, which is the National Higher Education Regulatory Council, the National Accreditation Council, the Higher Education Grounds Council, and the General Education Council, all have kind of been formalized in this in the system of how they're going to use technology to ensure greater transparency. So beyond that, the aim to expedite 100% literacy is also put forward there, and professional education, including legal and medical streams. So I think these are the two approaches, and I don't know how long I have, Dr. Ravi.
So I like these are the initial comments. So I will suggest like if you can just be brief.
Sure. I'll make one more point. So there is definitely opportunities at this time how we can further use technology. And a few days ago, I gave a presentation on a 3-point agenda. And this is basically, it's not a formal agenda from QS, but this is just what I put forward, is the 3-point agenda should be for higher education this time, should be a technology integrated research plan. Second is a technology integrated data and analytics plan for decision making, and technology integrated learning. And I can elaborate further on that as we move forward. But I think the adapting to disruption is what the policy also talks about. And I would like to just end by saying a few words that the higher education institutions in the country have been tasked with identifying those disruptive technologies well early in the start right now. What the policy says, we should be looking at potential and estimated time frame for disruption in the future, continuously do periodic analysis on how those technologies are going to come into play. And I think there's lots to be done. But the challenge is what India has at this time, and which I think the previous speaker, Dr. Shamsud, also pointed out, is the excess and availability of internet throughout the country. When we looked at the National Sample Survey Office, NSSO, which did a survey from July 2017 to June 2018, this was published later in November 2019. In rural India, only 4.4% of households have computers, as against 23.4% in urban households. And nearly 14.9% of rural households have internet facility, as against 42% in the urban households. So there is a lot to be done. The policy talks about taking the GDP to 6%, but I don't see that in the budget. So until we see that push on how we're going to increase the spend, how we're going to invest more, how a private player is going to come and invest more. There are a couple of areas we're talking about here. There's definitely aspiration. There is a plan to do it. There is already the GDP has been earmarked, but interestingly, when I looked at the 1968, it was 1968, the plan, which is I think the 1985-86 plan, also said that we should have 6% GDP at that time, but we were not able to achieve that as yet. So I think there's lots of groundwork to do on how we are going to implement that in the future in terms of really concrete plan and investment. So that's my opening notes, Dr. Gupta.
Sure. Excellent points, Dr. Ashwin. You have raised the most pertinent issues, and specifically about the budget and the intentions. The intentions are clear, but implementation is a harder journey, of course. So let me reach out to Meeta. Your views on this subject of NEP. I'm asking the initial comments briefly for 3 minutes, and so that we go to the next round. Meeta.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this discussion, and thank you, Ashwin, for such a wonderful summary. You've said almost all the things that all of us could have said put together. So I will therefore, actually, even just in my initial comments, share an opinion. And my opinion, and especially I think this is valuable to this EdTech community that is participating here, is that I am disappointed with the NEP and its integration and of technology. It uses the phrase very many times. It uses the word technology 43 times. Technology itself is pushed to a little section 23, as if it's a separate add-on. The days of technology being a separate add-on subject in education went away 30 years ago. I mean, this is, so the things that they have said in this policy could have been said 20 years ago. So where is this sense, and we are in the middle of this COVID crisis right now. all the work that we should have been doing in these past decades, we have not been doing them, and that's why we're in a crisis. I think the policy in a way tells us why we are here in a crisis. We should have had pedagogy-led digital learning for a very long time. We should have made our mistakes and we should have learned from them a long time ago. So the one thing that I'm hoping from this discussion, just to round off the initial remarks, the one thing I'm hoping for this discussion is an understanding of where we are now, regardless of policy. And even though we will need the policy to sort of have our back in a way for all the progress, and where can we take it from now, and how can we help the policy makers? There is NEAT, an alliance of education technology policymakers. How can we help them bring them up to speed is going to be my initial comment and request for this panel.
Interesting input. You mentioned that this had this policy had to be there 20 years back or 30 years back. That's interesting. And you are saying that technology is like putting in separate chapter. It's not inherently inside. Interesting observations. Very interesting. So let me come to Hemant, Sahal. So you are running a tech company. You are a tech pioneer. And so how do you see this NEP after listening to Ashwin and Meeta?
Yeah, no, yeah. So thanks, Ravi. It's always a pleasure to come to Elets, discussions. And today I always have two of my favorite people, Ashwin and Meeta here. So, and when it comes to policy, I would always speak after Meeta because policy is where I'll sit and listen to her. So I'll stick to higher education and technology, two areas I understand. Right. So I think the larger idea or which new education policy wants to achieve is bring more access, equity, affordability, quality, and accountability in education. Right. And like Meeta said, I think the policy recognizes that what are the things that we have not done in the past that we need to start doing in the future. So I'll stick. I'm an entrepreneur. I look at more opportunities. I embrace constraints. So I'll share how I look at technology playing a role going forward with a new education policy. It's three things. One, we are looking at gross enrollment ratio trying to go to 50%, which means that will not be possible without having more education institutions. Second, we are looking at entry of foreign institutions in the country, which means both of these things put together, there will be far more competition in the space than it has ever seen before. So I see one, competition becoming a very big force driving change. Second, we are talking about credit bank. We are talking about community engagement after the the regular hours of teaching are over. We are talking about outcome-based education, self-assessments, so many different things, which means the complexity in institutions will continue to increase. And to handle this complexity there is no other way but to embrace technology, right? Because institutions otherwise keep bloating the administration, keep bloating, their paper systems, fragmented approach to processes. The third thing is that we are talking about accreditation for every institution by 2030, without any exceptions. A lot of self-assessment, self-regulation will be coming in place, which means, again, technology is the only savior when it comes to compliance. Because if you don't, it's not that you only have to get it done once when inspection is happening. You need to continuously make sure that the benchmarks and standards are met and you are self-assessing yourself, your reports are ready at all the point of time. So I think technology will play a very large role because these three forces of greater compliance from a digital perspective, far more complexities in the system, and far more competition, which we have never seen before. These three things, whether the policy talks about technology really, which I agree with Meeta that technology is still been a side thing right now. But I think whether it is there in the policy or not, the institutions who want to thrive and sort of leverage on this NEP will start leveraging technology, because that's the only way they can address complexity, competition, and this higher compliance in the system. So with that, I think I'll conclude my opening remarks.
Sure. So three ways of looking at the things we have seen. Ashwin has talked about the facts and the challenges, and Meeta has talked about how what were the lowdowns in this policy, in fact, and Hemant, as usual, being entrepreneur, has to look at opportunities. So let me, in the second round, ask about the implementation challenges of the policy itself. That the policy has put up a grand vision itself. So, what are the timelines we are looking at? Probable timelines, if you can talk about. And since this summit is more focused on higher education, we will restrict our discussion in the higher education space. So, Ashwin, starting with you, that some of the important recommendations which are seen for the higher education sector, what you think it really will happen, is really possible, and it will not just remain on the paper. Ashwin.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's good to listen to all the perspective, and I think that gives a base to answer the question which you have said is the challenges and as such. I think the first is, as to continue from my last point, is the access to not just internet but also to having electricity. I mean, I'm living in Bangalore at this time, where we still have power cuts, and I can imagine what's going to happen in the remotest parts of India, where we have to reach those people. The survey, what we did, I mean, we did a survey called the FAIR survey a few months ago, which looked at students who are studying pan-India, looking at what the challenges they're having. And the basic challenge is that not all of them have a home broadband connection. Students are still using mobile hotspots. So that's one of the biggest access to internet being the big challenges. But with that, there are issues like power cuts, signal issues, cable cuts. We are looking at poor connectivity, and several other things which the students are suffering. Now, 53% of the students we surveyed at that time faced poor connectivity. 56.63% of those who were using the mobile hotspot faced signal issues. Now, with that, I think that there is a lot to be done if you want to even get into the planning is how do we increase access to that. So that is definitely one of the big challenges. But when we also look at other areas like the use of technology, how do we train people up on the use of the latest technology available across the space, and that includes providing faculty members with the capabilities, the resources to be able to upskill themselves as well. So I see the access as being one of the biggest challenges there. Also, the practical solutions with power and infrastructure and general awareness also put all together. So I think I don't have a lot to say particularly on the challenges, but one of the issues I had generally with what we're talking about is how are we going to attain the 6% GDP, because we didn't manage to do that in 1985-86, and that's the date I was looking for earlier. And for that, we will require more investment. And with that, as Hemant also said, we will see institutions coming in. There'll be more institutions opening up. Will foreign universities still come in? Well, we are yet to see that step. There have been a few write-ups in the last few weeks which raised skepticism on whether they would come in and what's going to happen. How is it? There's no clarity on that. But I think we are still in a little bit early stage at this time to see what's going to happen. Definitely, we have to move out of the COVID situation there and into the future to be able to have a proper judgment on that. But what I've seen, at least with a lot of foreign institutions, especially those coming in from Australia and Europe and US, we have students already who have started the coursework sitting right at home in India. Now, we've also seen in the paper in the last few days that Indian institutions will start online, or at least in Karnataka, I think will start online on the 1st of September, with looking at 1st of October to begin physical classes. Now, we yet have to see how is that going to play around for an actual start of the academic year. pan-India. So the topics for me, the challenge still is how are we going to provide access and use the looking at different challenges, what we're looking on those fronts. So yeah, that's from my side, Ravi.
Sure. Let me ask Meeta that one of the points which this NEP has raised is about outcome-based education, and especially in this sector of higher education. How do you see that playing out, where the high rate of unemployability is there in the higher education institution, especially the BTECs or the MBAs, and also how do you see the India will handle this like opening up of the education sector to the foreign institutions? Meeta.
So I think it would be, let me answer your second one first because it's much easier. We've seen this movie before of inviting foreign institutions in, and we have seen that our expectations and our vision of who we are is very different from the way the world perceives us. And this vision perception gap has to be bridged before we will find the quality, these foreign institutions wanting to come into India. Having said that, the whole world has recognized, especially in the past 2 to 3 years, 2 years especially, that India is still a great market for students and there's money to be made from Indian learning. It's at the end of the day, these foreign institutions are a business. And international students are money-making people. For them, they're not that invested in that growth. The whole public goods argument does not work for for international students. Foreign relations argument works, but that's a different one. So they will come in only if there is a foreign relations imperative. So if it's a part of a tripartite agreement between two prime ministers, presidents and prime ministers, then there will be notional investment in India. There will be investment in India in the edtech space, definitely from foreign institutions. Because, and this is something that goes to the core of the larger discussion we are having today. And Ashwin, twice you've mentioned the 6% of GDP. The 6% of GDP is another thing that's not going to happen. Especially not now with the COVID crisis, when all the money that's available will have to go towards health. So education will suffer. It has already suffered, and I've written some academic chapters on it for Springer, etc. The money is already going away in CSR from education to health. We also did, and this is coming back to your first question, I'm connecting the two. We also did a large global survey with, in partnership with a large edutech company as well, and we're about to launch it, where we surveyed global universities, quite a large number of global universities, and how they handled the pandemic. Because how we handled the pandemic, while it is crisis learning, was also a very quick lesson in upgrading yourself to edtech or enabling edtech. And what we learned is that naturally, I think at the end of the survey, is that assessments, for example, just like edtech businesses, assessments and operational issues got first priority. Now, if we want to talk about learning outcomes in higher education, but if our investments are going to be in learning outputs and operational delivery, then how are we going to make this happen? So the challenge to EdTech is threefold. One, bring a sense of learning, a slightly longer term vision into your investments. Have a sense of purpose in what you're doing, not just making money. Second, reduce the costs. 6% is not going to happen. Be happy with the 2.5%, 3%. And EdTech is the only way out of this. EdTech is the only way out of do this by scaling up. We can completely, we all of us played with Lego as children in different forms or blocks as children. We will have to dismantle the old bricks system, and the way we assemble the click system can deliver scale, can deliver outcomes, can deliver all the things that we need from higher education, even going beyond the master's and the PhD level. I would include continuous and lifelong education in this, because EdTech, in fact, has overperformed in the post-compulsory education space. And that's where it's a role model for us. So in terms of learning, I think EdTech has an opportunity right now to become a beacon and say, we can deliver this at half the cost that you have been doing so far. Now, is EdTech ready for this challenge, or is it going to stick to its valuation game? That is the challenge to EdTech.
Sure. So I think that the question goes to Hemant, that will it be the sense of purpose, or will it be a long-term approach, or will the EdTech be playing the evaluation game? So you are in this space, Hemant, so you have to answer the questions very, very deeply.
By the way, can I just, sorry, before you start, Hemant, can I add, I have a huge amount of respect for Hemant and the work he does. I think it's fundamental to the sector, and you do it well.
Thanks, Meeta. That made my day. So I think Meeta made a very great point about is it going to be a sense of purpose versus just a valuation game. And I think, for example, we have spent almost 7 years building out technology for the institutional space, while most of the investments were not happening in that. It was more in the B2C space. So I think I was reading the comments also of some of the participants, and I would like to talk about 3 specific things, Ravi. That one, I think, yes, there is a challenge of access. Yes, people do not have electricity. They do not have maybe broadband at their homes. They don't have other things. But see, it doesn't stop just with learning. They're struggling for the food as well, right? They're struggling for the other basic amenities of the, so shall we stop the digital learning or digital, push in the education because of that? No, right? So I think we have to look at a problem in a more modular way. That if we look at the whole segment of society who are, in the education, one part of it is super prepared for digital learning. That is already happening right now. And COVID has sort of accelerated that. There is that mid-tier, which is slowly now getting into the digital mode. We are talking to a lot of tier 2, tier 3 institutions who would have never imagined spending money on. Just a few days back, we signed up an institution, and the key trustee was telling me that you're the first person I'm writing such a check for technology. I've never thought I will spend so much on technology. So I think that mid-tier is slowly adapting. And like the right point which Meeta was mentioning, that they have started looking at technology as a long-term, that it will help them reduce administrative. It will make them more agile, flexible to different changes in the education system by trying to upgrade their curriculum faster, get access to upskilling opportunities for the students faster. The challenge is there. It's a big challenge for the other side, where access to internet is an issue, device availability is an issue. I think we'll have to solve that problem separately. We can't say that one solution will come and solve all these problems at one go. So at the moment, EdTech is growing fast, solving the problem for the first 2 layers. And it is good that we start solving it at scale. In the meanwhile, because there is an opportunity and the market always grabs new opportunities, I'm sure new models are going to come in the education technology space to address this access device and other issues as well. See, nobody would have imagined, the amount of mobile adoption that we have today, because different companies came with interesting propositions. How Geo disrupted the internet game so I'm sure markets will come with new ideas there. Final thought on the education technology space, connecting to some of the thoughts, points even Ashwin made. I see technology playing a role in 2 larger areas. When I look at teaching learning process, I see there is an attitudinal growth which is the nurturing of the mind, which is important. Second is the acquisition of knowledge, which is where the instruction-led teaching comes in play. And third is the skilling part, which is growing the specific skill set. In the past, I think education institutions have largely focused on the middle knowledge acquisition, right? That we teach in the class, let the kid acquire knowledge. I think technology is going to take over that. If I have to listen and understand a particular concept, I don't need to go to college for that. Institutions will have to rewire themselves and say, how do I create that attitudinal growth opportunities for my students, give them access to, grow, in their foundation. which is important. Second, how do I create a experiential learning, skilling opportunities for my students? And that will fundamentally change the way institutions were structured earlier. Right now, they're structured towards more teaching, instruction-led knowledge acquisition play, which is technology is going to take over. And we have to look at it while technology has access issues. Technology is a big leveler there, right? A student, not everybody has a chance to go to IIT or IIM or a top tier institution, but with mobile phones, students even in the remotest of the regions or from the remote or the low income group areas will also have access to the equally good content to acquire knowledge, which anybody in a top tier institution has, right? So that access to instruction will be solved. Technology is going to be a big leveler there, by making this change happen. And then with more technologies coming in with access to online labs or simulations, somebody who cannot afford, I remember when I was in college, so many of these kits were very expensive. You go buy these engineering, drawing, and so many other things, and they're very expensive, and not everybody can buy a lot of these skilling kits and other things, or they can have access to infrastructure at rural areas. So technology is again going to be a big leveler. If I can get into a virtual reality mode and get access to those workshops and labs and get my training done with such low cost of investment in creating those experiences, technology will solve problems, reduced cost of training and skilling in the long term. Like I said, markets look at opportunities and grab them. I think soon, in the next couple of years, we will see large plays coming out there, and then all these, technology actually becoming more a leveler than being a divider in terms of the opportunity, access to opportunities.
Sure. So, Hemant, thanks for highlighting this role of EdTech in this whole transformation process of the institutions, and like you mentioned about the example of like some institute spending an amount which they never thought of. So the asking Ashwin that what's your view on how technology is going to transform the higher education institutions in the country? Where are they right now, and what is the opportunity they have, like if they adopt IT in a bigger way? Ashwin.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Ravi. So I echo with whatever has been said earlier, and I think technology and edtech in India is important. If you look at the numbers, and I'd like to give one number which I have just got earlier. It is estimated that by 2020 the K-12 edtech market will be worth 1.7 billion, and the post K-12 edtech market will be worth 1.8 billion. So definitely there is a need for the edtech companies to collaborate with educational institutions, and for educational institutions to embrace technology, to embrace what's available, and so that we've only looked at how we can right now use technology to zoom in and deliver a class, but I think there's much more than that, and technology can play a much bigger role into managing several functions of a university. That includes enrollment management, teaching and learning, placements. I think that's important, and we've seen how technology has enabled people to do internships at this time. Looking at industry-oriented research, innovation, internationalization. And this is one of the things which Indian institutions have always complained about is, we cannot send our faculty overseas. We have constant funding. So with technology, I've seen right now for the last 5 months, even for me, I've been collaborating with offices right from the West Coast of the US, the East Coast of Japan. So it is possible by the use of technology. So we should not only look at technology as how do we deliver your classroom teaching, but go beyond that. A management of finances, and most importantly, when we encompass all of this together, is data analytics. How do you use technology to make better decisions? Because we can all say that we should use technology only for the stopgap measure. A lot of institutions, when we've seen the pandemic hitting in March, we're saying, well, it's a temporary thing. We'll get back to classrooms in the next 2 months. We just need a stopgap measure, but it is no longer a stopgap measure here. We are looking at this being a long-term exercise. And if we have to reach, besides the problems we have, of course, there are I got disconnected a while back because my broadband dropped and I had to switch to a geo dongle. So there are challenges. We will overcome the challenges. Indians are known to be resilient, but we have to do that with the use of technology. How do edtech companies like Collpoll provide technology which not only works on the latest hardware and the platforms, but how does it work on perhaps technology which already people are using in across mobile phones? How do you make it responsive on the mobile phones? That's for the student side, and also for institutions. How do you enable them to encompass all the functions of managing a better university? And I will quote a report which came out by the World Bank, which said that universities that adopted technology were definitely much more adaptable to the current pandemic as well. So definitely, they were able to immediately move things online, and they are basically saying institutions in Australia or in the West, which already have adopted technology. We are yet to do that because we are looking at that as a cost, not as an investment. So yeah, that's my comments, Dr. Ravi.
Sure. So as you have mentioned, Ashwin, that moving from cost to investment, that mindset has to happen if you have to use the potential of IP technology which you own. Asking Meeta, that what's your view of what are the biggest hindrances of using of IT in higher education institutions in India, and how is COVID and NEP going to change that?
Very simply, fear. Fear holds us back completely. We are and as humans we are, and as institutions, as systems, we are afraid of change. And there is a reason for that. The job of a higher education institution is to be a long-term sustainable institution. Traditionally, higher education institutions have had much more longevity than most dynasties have had. So you expect, and in order to build that kind of stability, in order to build that kind of longevity, you have to have what I think Weber called an iron cage. So you have to have systems that don't change too frequently and therefore give that kind of stability. That does not mean that you do not progress. I mean, if you look at the oldest universities with great prestige today, Oxford and Cambridge, if you walk into, you will look at stone walls and you will look at ancient wooden doors. The doors may be made of wood, but as you walk past them, if you have that e-pass in your pocket, the doors will open automatically for you. You do not even have to ring the bell. So this is technology embedded. So you can walk through all the way through to your classroom. The library door will open for you only if you are entitled to that. That's technology as it should be used, because it eases, it controls, it monitors, it builds governance systems. So the entire cycle of learning is embedded in, and you do not lose your stability. There's nothing of the old that is lost as such. And I think that is a challenge that has been put to us, both by, now thankfully, in fact, COVID came as a catalyst for us. Everybody says COVID is a crisis, but really COVID came as a catalyst, because all the edtech vendors would be knocking doors of institutions saying, please, at least let us give a demo, we can make it better for you. But now finally have a hearing. At least that first barrier is gone. Sadly, I will also say the flip side of it is all the edtech that we have so far is people saying, I was a student, I had a problem, I am a Gyani, I know how to solve the problem. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you have identified the pain point of the education system. You may have identified something. So I think we have a design issue here as well. I think that's in terms of what COVID has told us. COVID has given us information and it has exposed all the problems. NEP has given us a vision saying we need to integrate technology. To be honest, it names things like AI. And if you name one little piece of progress right now, when you have a 20-year view, it's a 20-year plan. AI would be ancient by 2040. Nobody would even remember what AI is. It will be like MySpace or something like that. Or those blue boxes that we used to have with green letters blinking in our screens. So naming device, being device agnostic is essential, being technology agnostic is essential, being purpose driven, and that integration is essential. And I think we finally reached a point where we realize, yes, we have to do it now. And honestly, it's smart, and and for lazy students, it's just so much easier to just log into a lesson than to wake up in the morning and meet a timetable or a roll call. I mean, things that were redundant. The 40 into 40 model in K-12 is the catchy phrase that I use. You don't need a 40-minute class anymore. You don't need synchronous learning anymore. So many things have been exposed. And I think this is where the NEP and the COVID conjunction leads us to information and to exposing what is important and what is not important. And therefore making choices.
So thanks to Meeta that highlighting that word fear, and also that this COVID coming as a catalyst more than the NEP itself. Let me ask Hemant that where are Indian higher education institutions in adoption of technology right now? Like where are in the curve? Meeta just mentioned about that you go to an old institution, 100 years old, 200 years old, the gates are the same, but you require an e-pass to enter. So simple available usage of IT which is happening. It's not happening in India. So where are institutions right now in technology adoption curve, and what is the journey looking like? How do you see it?
Yeah, thanks, Ravi. It's a very important question of where are our institutions right now. So if I look at technology play in education, I divide it into 3 different layers. The base layer is what I call as the systems of record. That I have a faculty data, student data, timetable, exam scores, attendance scores, learning material. So this system of record is the base layer, right? On top of that is the system of engagement, that how are people collaborating with each other, a finance officer, administrative officer, how are teachers interacting with the students, how are students to student interactions happening on extracurriculars and other activities. And that's the second layer, which is systems of engagement and third is the systems of intelligence, that if you have people using technology for everyday activities in the campus, teaching, learning, administrative activities, all of that happening, there's a lot of data footprint, and then you can convert this data footprint into intelligence. So you having a track of how students are progressing, which student requires attention, your finances, your usage of infrastructure, you have that complete understanding, right? Now, I would say that almost 99% of the institutions are still struggling with the base system of record right now, right? They are still looking at a traditional ERP. They are still looking at just making sure the records go from a register or an Excel sheet into an ERP system. They are not yet looking beyond that. And I think we will continue to struggle. We will continue to drag our feet until unless 2 big changes happen. First, institutions have to look at technology as another important area where they need to invest not only in buying solutions, but also the people internally. Right? So we have to go beyond just saying that, okay, he or she is my professor of computer science, so he or she should look after my technology implementation. I think that's the biggest disaster institutions do, and they have to go beyond that. They have to get in and invest in people who understand what technology implementation looks like, what plans have to be, and then they need to have a long-term view of that. And I will speak on that. What are the 3 or few areas I see technology focus should be there, but investing in the right competent teams and empowering them. Because getting a IT leader and then nobody listening to them doesn't work. So I think that until unless that, because see, on the other side, technologies are there. They were earlier there also, right? But until unless you have people who can implement it well, how will you see the results? So that's one key area I see. The second thing is institutions need to have a long-term view. right? I know so many institutions who have burnt money buying unnecessary Zoom licenses, which were not required beyond a certain point. There are institutions who have bought some random things in a hurry because they were just looking at short term. Like, how do I get my classes done? How do I complete my examinations and be done with it? And they made wrong investments. So institutions need to have a long-term roadmap for technology adoption, and they need to take that step-by-step approach, and they need to have those people who can, implement. 3 areas I see technology will play important role. Institutions should focus very sharply on that. One is like I said, that whole knowledge acquisition, instruction-led, like Meeta also mentioned, synchronous learning side. I think most of the topics can be learned by watching a video from a knowledge acquisition perspective. So institutions have to start focusing that how will they facilitate that attitudinal learning or growth, that overall personality development of their students. How are they going to facilitate in their campuses? Second, how are they going to focus on upskilling? So that too. So they have to slowly embrace the fact instruction is going to go digital. How are we going to play a role in the other 2 regions? That's one very important area. And how do you then measure that? Are you successful in doing that? There is a very simple term. You need to have a student portfolio, which tells you where is your student in terms of personality growth. Is this student introvert? Is this student extrovert? What are the cognitive, skills? Is the student good in memory, or is the student good in problem solving? Second is from a knowledge perspective, simple assessments. Okay, how does the student stand on different subjects, their knowledge? And third, skilling. What kind of projects has the student done? What kind of internships the student has done? And putting all of that together into a portfolio where institution knows where is the student, at the moment in terms of the learning journey. And believe me, with the assessments going very evolved in the future, like I said, technology is more a leveler than a divider. What's happening in the world of coding today is I don't care whether the student comes from tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 institution. I have a assessment for the student, in a single day. I can get to know whether the student is a good coder or not. And I don't care where he comes from. And what that does is it opens the employability of opportunities to students from anywhere. I don't need to be from a premium institution to get a good job. But that portfolios will be very important from a technology usage perspective from the institutions. And third, the last thing which I want to mention, apart from that, these 2 things, is the institutions need to look at technology, that administration has to be standardized. The admissions, finance, where there is so much of bloating, so much of inefficiencies, errors happening. I think industry has done that 30, 40, 50 years back. They have adopted technologies to standardize their processes. Institutions are still trying to do it over registers, over Excel sheet, over people doing it. We need to look at technology taking over administration, instruction-led that learning side. The skilling and attitudinal growth is where institutions should start playing a bigger role. That's where you need more interactions, more collaborations, and learning needs to be measured by more holistic portfolios of students where technology can again play a role. And that's, I think, my comments.
Great points, Hemant. You have highlighted the whole range of challenges and also the opportunities of the range of areas where IT can be implemented. Let me come at the end of this session and concluding the remarks I'm going to ask. And the question is that Indian higher education institutions, both government and the private ones, most of them are not coming into the top 200 ranking globally. So is NEP going to help? Is technology going to help? So let me ask Meeta.
So actually, I have to say, it's a conundrum. It's difficult. It's a difficult question. It's not as obvious. I mean, the obvious answer would be, of course, we want to be globally competitive, etc. But the fact remains that QS and Times Higher Education, the 2 key ones that I have engaged with, are designed, and every global index will have to be designed for a global perspective. But the entire point of working ahead, saying this is where I want to be next, should be based on national imperatives. Should be saying, this is my purpose. Did I meet my goal? How did I do in comparison to others? That's ranking, right? How did I do in comparison to others in meeting my goals? So as an institution, I have my set of goals. As a country, I have my set of goals. And at this point of time, even 5 years ago, and even at this point of time, I'm not wholly convinced that India is ready to play the global goals game yet. I don't think India is ready for that because we still have a way to go in that. Of course, we are very good. We are like CAT people, IIT, JEE people, NEET people, where we are discussing these issues today itself. We know how to crack exams. So QS is one exam. We have the criteria. We know 25% internationalization, blah, blah, blah. Easy for us to crack it. Look at the criteria, do that, patak. One paper, divide it into 3 papers, do citations for each other, rise up the H indices. Cracking exams and cracking indices and cracking ranks is not a difficult game for us. But is that where we should be spending our energy is the question we should be asking ourselves. And I think my personal answer is at this point of time, we should be working towards building a sense of truth, trust, and integrity in our higher education institutions, which we will all admit in private is sadly missing. And we need to become worthy of ourselves for true self-respect and then true goal matching.
Sure. Thanks, Meeta, for putting this question in a broader perspective, that what are the national goals, national imperatives, should we focus there? Let me ask Ashwin, that should Indian institutions look at these rankings at all, or we need a different goal altogether?
Extremely good question there, and I agree with Meeta on whatever she has said. There are definitely national priorities, but let's look at all the developed or those countries which are developing, and what are rankings meant for. Okay, that's where we are losing our sight. Is rankings are the outcomes of what's happening in the country. Today, the countries that have established a good R&D in industries, have used technology for the whole country, and some of them being Singapore for that matter, or Hong Kong as a city state, or we're looking at some of the good. I'm looking at countries in Asia, whichever have established themselves well, have universities also which are part of the progress of that country. So if you want to definitely take us to increase the GDP, whatever it is we're looking at, 6%, we want to even bring it to 5% as a start. We want to get international students to come in and spend their money in India rather than our students going out and spending the money overseas. We want to get international renowned faculty to come in. We want industries to come in, set up shop, do their R&D in India, okay, invest some money in India. We have to have world-class universities. And how are we going to have world-class universities is, and I'm not saying QS or for that matter, even THE or Shanghai Jiaotong is the ultimate indicator that universities are good. They are one of the measures. They are one of the indicators which show how universities are doing. And, there are a couple of quotes, and, one of the quotes which I would like to mention here is, without data, you're just another person with an opinion. So you need data to back you up. And I think what QS does, or THE or any other ranking, it provides the data. It might not be perfect. It is not the word of God which says that, this is the best. But it is one of the measures. It measures universities on a global level and is evolving. I think every year we've seen rankings coming out, increasing the numbers. The world ranking, which QS does, has 1,000 universities in there, which is increased from 500 when we initially started, went up. The methodology has evolved as well. So we should look at rankings as an outcome. And I think if universities are doing things right, eventually they will start featuring in the top 200 or the top 500 of the world, and get the status it deserves. So I would not say that it is ultimate. It is one of the measures. Definitely, they have to look at accreditation. They have to look at getting good quality faculty, looking at how do you provide lifelong learning to your students, because that's something missing in a lot of institutions is connect with your alumni after they leave. So what happens, and I think what happens is most of the bright and the best kids go abroad. They take the revenue abroad to foreign universities, and they are well established in the Silicon Valley of the US. They are established in other places. But we want that to happen and them to stay back in India. That hopefully, I mean, just my opinion, will also reflect in the rankings in the future. So that's my my concluding few cents.
Sure. Ashwin, excellent inputs. Let me ask another question to Hemant. What are the difference in technology adoption patterns in higher education in government versus private institutions? How do you see that?
Yeah. So I would have very less knowledge of that subject, Ravi, because we have sort of stayed away from working with the government institutions because of the processes involved, and then the dynamics are very different, you know. And I think that also connects to the last question which you asked, and I would also like to point out to that. I think rankings are very important. Institutions have to focus on that, and all our good top premium institutions should be looking at how do they keep scaling up, because it not just helps us in the perception, but it also helps us create role models for the other institutions, right? But I would want to give a comparison of why I think at the moment majority of the Indian institutions should not even worry about getting into the top 200 or top 1000, because there are larger problems to be focused at, right? And not everybody really needs to be there. And now that this is a Tamil Nadu event, see, if I want to eat good Tair Sadam, I don't want to go to a Michelin star restaurant all the time, right? I know my places around which serve it really well, and I want to go there, right? Or if I go back to the place where I belong, which is Delhi, if I want a good paratha, I go to Murtal. I don't go to Taj, right? So I think we have to look at what different institutions should be focusing on. There are institutions which should just be focusing on making sure the students are growing from a attitude and a personality perspective. They are able to make good friends. They are able to get teachers who are encouraging them and facilitating their learning. They are getting opportunities to be part of projects, part of events, and all of that. And I don't think 40 to 50% of the institutions will ever be able to invest in world-class research in India. It's a long term goal. It requires a lot of money, and even the best of the institutions in the country are not able to invest other than the government institutions where the government is funding. Because on one side you have to look at how will private universities invest in crores and crores of rupees that it requires to invest in laboratories, especially when it comes to wet laboratories, which is not going to be, or how are you going to afford the salaries of these top professors? You can't, and so we shouldn't even put that goal to our a regular Indian institution. So I think technology will help in compliance side, reducing the burden, because not everybody has the knowledge. I think QS is doing a great job with iGauge and preparing institutions for understanding where do they stand in terms of data. But I'm sure Ashwin will tell you that most institutions don't even have their data sorted. And forget tier 2, tier 3 institutions, even some of the best institutions don't have their data sorted, right? So we are still in very early days. We are taking our baby steps. Indian education has served a purpose in that industrial age when we needed to prepare kids for a certain skill set, and in a more assembly line model, they getting a job and a placement. Those days are sort of fading away. We are getting into a new era. The new era is full of possibilities. We have so many new kinds of job opportunities, employment opportunities. Entrepreneurship has become a mainstream thing today, accepted by society, as well as funding and other opportunities. So with the new kind of career opportunities available, so the institutions have to grow. The economy has grown. The infrastructure in the country has grown. And there is no one answer for it. I think everybody will have to keep their ears and eyes open, keep responding to the different stimuli that are coming to us, and keep growing together. And technology will definitely play a role. because like I said, there's nothing more powerful than technology getting into any space. And Mark Anderson said that beautifully, that software is eating the world. So we like it or not like it, that's going to happen. And it just got into technology, so we need to wake up and realize it's already around. If you don't embrace it, we will be sitting out of the game. So if you want to stay in the game, technology is going to be a key partner going forward.
Sure. Let me ask concluding one line or two line statement from each of the panelists, that how do you see the role of technology and overall higher education institutions in India in next 5 years? Meeta, let me ask you first.
That's actually a beautiful question, a difficult question. The role of technology in higher education institutions will have to be that of a supporter. So I'm expecting something that is accessible, something that I should not need to train for. They say the best UI or UX, the techies will know that, is one that is invisible. So I would expect technology to support me completely invisibly so that I can work. And I'm saying this from a demand perspective, from an educator's perspective, semi-academician perspective. I want technology to do most of the work for me so that I can focus on higher value added inputs, so that I can build, so that I can create, so that I can nurture. I want to be able to focus on that. I do not want to be pulled down into invoicing or scheduling or timetabling or any administrative job. I do want it to work hand in hand with me. At the same time, I want technology to be respectful and not skewed as algorithms are. So I'm asking for that effort as well. I need it to be respectful. If we have a portfolio, or as the NEP has said, have a scorecard and a results card for students from the age of 3 to the age of 25, then I expect technology to be respectful and to anonymize that and to maintain privacy. So the expectations of technology and to be delivered in the next 5 years, if not the next year, are all of these: invisible, hardworking, sustainable, reasonable, affordable, of course, and respectful.
Fantastic. Very comprehensive, and I think the demands are very high.
Very high, yes.
Yeah, very high.
And this is what that shows that we care about technology.
Yes. So, Ashwin, your views for next 5 years, roadmap for technology.
I think Meeta has summed that up already. I also think infrastructure generally should be the focus as well. How does private, and I think we have to rely on the private sector here to come in to provide better access to infrastructure in the country. Because if you are not going to work on that simultaneously, we might have the best technology, but access will be a problem. So we should be looking at that. I mean, I'm looking at not just in the mainstream of India, but also the smaller parts of India. How do we increase access? And how does technology play a role beyond just delivery to the students, but also beyond after they are out from their classrooms, lifelong learning, where I'm looking at how does that play a role? How do we upskill people, and also looking at perhaps a lot of jobs in the next few years are going to be extinct. How does technology play a role? How do institutions use technology to upskill people to be ready for the future? Because what COVID has done is has a kind of fast forwarded of I think 5 to 10 years already, and people are much ahead than what we are looking at. And by the means of that, there are a lot of people who are doing probably data entry, who are doing other work, which you would require a lot of manpower, will need to upskill themselves. So beyond just looking at the students, but how do we generally reach out to the whole country and make sure that people are ready for the future? NEP also says that universities should look for disruption much before. I mean, it has mentioned AI as one of the technology to look forward to, but there's going to be much more that is going to come out of this. Innovation is at its peak in the edtech space. So I think preparing for that, and I think institutions need to start looking and start planning on what's going to come out in the next 10, 20 years, and starting to adopt that, adapt that, and prepare not just the current students, but also the future students and the workforce who is already out there to enable them to overcome the challenges of the future.
Great input, Ashwin. Thank you. And Hemant, your concluding remarks.
Yeah, sure, Ravi. So, in the last 7 years of building Collpoll, we have learned so much about this space. And I think from a perspective of, I came from a space where I was doing quite well. And then when I got into this space, it was a lot of reality check, how institutions work, how, like Meeta was saying, you keep knocking the doors, they don't really listen to take, that, oh, they say, oh, no, I have got already everything. So I would say that today where we are, we work with some of the best institutions in the country, like Ashoka, OP Jindal Global University, to Manipal, to several others, right? And I would say that what I have seen where technology has been able to play a fruitful or a meaningful role, where we can say, yes, there is a return on the investment institutions are putting. I would say 3 things which are very important, which I would leave the participants with. One, you need to invest in the right team. If you don't have a good team looking after technology implementation, whatever investments you do, it's not going to work out. Second, if you do not have a long-term view in investing technology, if you don't change that lens of pricing to lens of return on investment, you will always stay in that that mode of saying, oh, this is for 100 rupees, this is for 200 rupees, this gives me 20 features, this gives me 50 features, oh wow, this is better, right? So we have to remove that lens of pricing to lens of return on investment. What am I investing? What returns am I going to get? Some in the short term, some in the long term. Until unless we put that lens, institutional key leaders will never be able to take the right decisions in terms of what they should be doing with technology. That's second. Third, and the last thing is, mentioned, technology has to be very humanly. It has to be intuitive. Institutions have to stay focused on what is the technology their teachers, their students are appreciating. It cannot be a top-down approach all the time. Yes, finance decisions can be top-down, but when it comes to technology decisions, institutions should take their teachers, should take process, and then make sure they adopt technologies which have a larger acceptance, and not just what they. So that's.
I think some of the other speakers of the other session are trying to join. So I think we are like at the concluding stage anyway. So let me
we all are getting used to it. I think we all are getting used to it.
Now, disruption is something we don't fear anymore. Disruption's our game.
Yes. Yes. So great inputs and discussions. Thank you, Meeta, and thank you, Ashwin, and thank you, Hemant, for amazing ideas and inputs. Great interacting with all of you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ravi. Great to be a part of.
Thanks to my co-panelists.
Thanks, Ashwin. Thanks, Meeta.
Thank you.